On episode 74 of Circles Off, we have a brand new presenting sponsor that we're very excited about. We also welcome in Hammer.bet community content writer Ferris, where we talk about syndicates, real syndicates, and also getting stiffed. Get your mind out of the gutter. With that, let's start the process.
All right, welcome everybody. Episode 74. Rob, any numbers?
Oh yeah.
What do you got?
Okay, this is like obviously not a mainstream one, but Joe Nathan wore 74.
Okay.
For 13 years. Okay, MLB closer.
Oh, Joe Nathan.
Joe
on
Nathan.
the Twins.
Yeah.
I do know who that is.
Yeah,
of
wore
course.
for a
Joe Nathan.
long time.
Canadian.
Yes. Is he?
No, maybe.
I don't think so. I don't know why I said yes right away. I have to double check.
I got a Canadian here. He's actually, I believe, Belarusian, but he was on the Montreal Canadiens. Sergei Kostitsyn.
We're on a rush
brother.
of Canadians because 73 was a ton of Montreal Canadians. It was like Michael Ryder and a bunch of guys. John Carlson of the Washington Capitals is number 73. Or 74, excuse me. There's got to be some offensive
Joe
line.
Nathan was, in fact, born
Which offensive?
in Houston, Texas.
Here we go. Joe Staley wore number 74.
Good
for
player.
104 NFL games.
So we have some really big news to announce. As of episode 74, this podcast, Circles Off, is now presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook in Ontario and Canada, not available in the U.S. Pinnacle Sportsbook, our brand new sponsor. We are stoked to have them. This is one of the absolute best sportsbooks for the player. We've talked about it many times. A lot of different things that sportsbooks do wrong. Pinnacle does them all right, and we're happy to have them as our presenting sponsor. Rob, why is Pinnacle your favorite book?
It's where the best bettors play, is the reality of the situation, and that's something that is very important to me, but it's a low vig book, and that is extremely important to have in your arsenal when you bet on sports. You win more, you lose less. Plain and simple, if you're betting into low vig, you have obviously a break-even rate that is much lower than everything else, so happy to be presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook, one of the world's sharpest sportsbooks.
Yeah, and we're not going to do this every week, but I do think, for the first episode, it is very fair for us to share, a couple things that Pinnacle does well, very honest and open feedback. Rob and I are not the kind of guys that are going to take a sponsorship for, something that we don't necessarily believe in. With Pinnacle, my favorite part about their sportsbook, and you don't get this in the regulated market outside of Circa Sports, which, we've had a few members on from, but Pinnacle in Canada is the only place in the regulated market that will not limit your action for winning too much. Pinnacle has very fair posted house limits. They're always going to take that max bet. As we've referenced, the actual premise and name for our show, Circles Off, is an ode to an old bookmaking reference from Pinnacle and some other sites back in the day where they would raise the circles and then eventually take them off when they wanted to take bigger max bets. What this does, though, compared to your average sports books in the regulated market right now, is gives the player a fair chance to understand what the max bet is. It doesn't matter who that player is. Could be me, could be Rob, could be Zach behind the desk, could be anyone. They can get that max. In the current market right now, it just doesn't happen. Some players might have a really square account, lost a bunch of money, you're able to bet a lot more. Other players might have won a lot of money, and now they're only able to bet $12. Pinnacle will not limit you. That is the best feature of their sportsbook. It's very, very refreshing to see that, and finally a spot in Ontario as of the recording of this podcast. Pinnacle is now live in Ontario. You can sign up, visit Pinnacle, and it's one of the sportsbooks you need to have, simply put.
We've done a lot of episodes of Circles Off on price sensitivity. It's extremely important to always shop for the best number. It's very easy to find the best price available in market at Pinnacle because of the fact that they're often dealing minus 104 on both sides of the game rather than minus 110. And that's extremely important. If you're a $100 bettor and you lose a bet, you lose $6 less. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but all of this stuff adds up over time. If you're betting underdogs, you're going to win more. So I'm very happy to be partnered with Pinnacle. They're a sportsbook that I have personally used for the vast majority of my life. They've always treated me fairly well, and I think it's a sportsbook that you need to have in your arsenal, plain and simple.
Yeah, we talk about having multiple sportsbook. This is one that, no matter what, you got to have at least at all times some cash in Pinnacle, whether it be playing back on a position, finding a bet, a good line, building out different positions. This is the book you need because they're offering liquidity with zero risk of like, hey, my account's going to get limited or this is going to happen or whatever. It's a very safe spot to play. And obviously now under the regulated banner within Ontario. So not available in the US, unfortunately, but to everyone who is in Canada, go sign up to Pinnacle today.
All right, let's switch gears. We now welcome in our guest this week. He goes by the alias of Ferris. We'll talk about that a little bit. If you want to read some of Ferris's work, he has a couple articles published on the hammer.bet. One is What's a Betting Partnership, which is a fantastic read. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And also a new article that got published last week, So You Got Stiffed. Very interesting as well. Highly recommend checking both of those out at the hammer.bet. Ferris, welcome to Circles Off. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you guys for having me. This is pretty surreal. I kind of want to say it's a dream come true to be talking with you guys, but I feel like that's pretty intense. Maybe me better dreams if that's the case, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So
is this one of those long-time listener, first-time caller?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you for the support. And echoing what Rob said, both the articles posted on over at thehammer.bet were phenomenal reads, not only from an informational standpoint, but also Ferris, you seem like a really good writer as well. So I definitely urge you guys to check those out. They're stuff that doesn't exist right now in the space. Most people like to write about picks. They sometimes like to write about strategy. And recent terms, you have a lot about origination. You know, how do I build a model and how do I do this? But few people actually openly talk about how a betting partnership works, how you can give accounts and get accounts, and how you could deal with a lay down or a stiff, which is essentially, you know, someone owing you money and then not paying you. So read those articles. They're awesome. We're going to get into them on the episode today. Rob?
Yeah, so we'll start with this, Ferris. Obviously, we like to get some sort of introduction with every guest that we have on the show. I don't know much about you. Johnny doesn't know much about you. So give us some of your personal background and essentially how you got involved in the betting space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make it very clear off the top. I'm a nobody. I'm not special. I'm not. I have not figured everything out. I think the number one thing I have going for me is that I'm your listener. I am the regular, average, everyday person who has picked up stuff here and there, listening to content, reading content, and diving into the space as much as I possibly could. So I'm a nobody. My background in betting, this stop me if you've heard this before. It started young, middle school, high school. I had a friend who he said he was going to be a bookie, but he wasn't booking the bets. He was just like finding two people that wanted to bet against each other and then logging it in his notebook. So like you weren't a bookie. You were just like a scribe. You were like a secretary. He kind of forgot to take the VIG. So we started in middle school. I think I'm around the same age as you guys, mid 30s. We were around for the poker boom, the Chris Moneymaker stuff, ESPN airing all of it. So we started up poker games. Natural progression from there was, you know, March Madness pools, fantasy sports, and then sports betting. I had a friend who had the guts to open up an offshore account, you know, like many of us do. I texted him a $5 7-team parlay. It was my first ever parlay. So, you know, it's hitting, guaranteed winner. Won $300 and I was off. Had the guts to open my own offshore account and made many deposits over the course of college years. And then eventually made my way into kind of the space I spoke about in this article on the Hammer. I got into PPH world, paperhead world, and spent the 2010s losing, and then losing some more. And Rob, as you've talked about, my years, I've probably been gambling 18 years on sports. 14 of those 18 are losing years. Now I'm a lifetime winner now because the units have increased and the money has increased what I'm getting down. Right. But 14 of the 18 years, I've lost money. I know exactly what it feels like. I know what it's like to sit there on Sunday night and you're trying to get under the settle number, and you can't, and it feels terrible. So spent the majority of my betting career losing, paperheads, offshores, and that's it. Nothing, you know, no major group I run or anything like that. I'm just a regular bettor.
So obviously a lot of us, this is like probably 95%, if not more, of the guests that we've had on Circles Off or people that I've talked to about sports betting start with a similar story, which is losing for a long time. For you, what allowed you to transition from being a losing bettor to a winning bettor? Like, was there an aha moment? Was it something that just gradually happened over time? basically share your personal experience on making that shift. Because there's a lot of people out there that frankly are losing bettors and they feel like they're stuck in it forever. So what was that, that like for you in graduating to being a winning bettor?
For sure. The message I'm going to send first and foremost, surround yourself with the smartest people you can find. I am a product. 100% of my success comes from the people around me, without a doubt. Now, I'm not going to be completely humble and say I haven't figured some things out on my own and I network my butt off, but surround yourself with, I found people that were like-minded and I considered them way more intelligent than me. A friend that I had since I was 5 years old, we've known each other for decades. He eventually took an interest in the sports gambling space and he started to teach me things. I had been in it way longer than him, way more years than him, and yet he was running circles around me almost immediately. So I'm just a sponge. Take it all in, listen to him. He can look at an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheets or whatever, and he can just build. He can look at a blank spreadsheet and figure out a way to model things. And I was forever grateful for him to just start letting me in on that sort of thing. There was necessarily no like all of a sudden, hey, I got to figure this out, other than, and I know, Rob, you've kind of touched on this in the past, I probably got close to problem gambling. In fact, I probably showed some of the problem gambling signs in a part of my life where I could not afford to have problem gambling. Obviously, you get older, your family comes into play, career. Problem gambling is real, and you can't let it affect your life. So essentially, I had to sit down and tell myself, you've got to figure this out or you've got to give it up. I'm not one to go cold turkey off things. So I'm going to try and figure it out. I'm going to try and do the smart thing. I'm going to try and find the right people. And I'm going to try and make money betting on sports.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, if you're betting on Sunday nights to try to get under your settle figure, that is exhibit A of problem gambling.
Yeah, what he means by that for anyone listening is if you, for example, had said to your bookie, hey, if I lose or win 2,000, that is when we're going to have to actually exchange the money. If it's anything under that, we'll carry it forward a week, right? So if you're at down 2,400 or down 2,800, then on Sunday night, you may have to place a $900 bet just to, if you win it, you're under, and then you don't have to pay. You don't have to come up with the money. But that is a real issue for problem. Like, it's chasing. You're really
100%. It's just I mean, listen, we've all been there at some capacity. You don't want to have that meetup. So you make a bet that you wouldn't have placed otherwise, just because there's the chance that you don't have to have that meetup. And then more often than not, you probably end up losing.
So Ferris, I was with our good friend Spanky in Boston a few years ago. And somebody asked him, Spanky, how do I get a PPH account? How do I get one of these credit bookie accounts? And the answer he gave, I think he told this on his podcast as well. He said, you got a barber? He said, go to your barber and ask him if he knows any bookies. He's like, chances are he is a bookie himself. But anyways, great, funny answer. But I want to know, how did you get into the PPH world? How did you get your first one?
Friend of a friend, completely lucked into it. I know everybody that's looking for a PPH account, they're looking for this is guaranteed to get you an account if you do this, this, and this. You luck into it. I've heard of late, I'm not a country club guy, but I've heard country clubs are ripe with sports betting accounts. Maybe I should go join one. That might take a dent out of the bankroll, I guess, but it might be worth it in the long run. But country clubs, sports bars, don't be quiet. When you're talking with your friends about betting at a sports bar, you never know. You have your PPH account up. Someone there might have one themselves, and you start comparing notes. You kind of have to luck into it. No bookie, because again, I'm sure we're getting this. It's illegal. Booking bets without a license from the government is illegal, and they're not exactly broadcasting it. Don't ever trust the Twitter people. Don't ever trust the guaranteed payout on Twitter books. They're going to screw you over. You find PPH accounts through some luck and then putting yourself in the right spot. Poker rooms are another one. I haven't played poker in so many years. I don't even know if I remember how, but poker rooms, I'm sure, would be another great place to start. But like Spanky mentioned, the barber stuff, I know it's more of a joke, but everything has progressed. It's not so much old school anymore. I think sometimes Spanky speaks like it's still like the 50s and 60s, but he's awesome. I love Spanky. It's just like, things aren't the same as they used to be. I don't know.
Yeah. If I could share a personal story, probably about 4 years ago, I was doing some stuff with Joey Tunes, who's another professional bettor, and he was in Toronto, came to visit for a couple days, hung out, went to a Blue Jays game, baseball game, Blue Jays and Yankees. And the two guys sitting behind us were complaining about how they were going to lose their bet on the game. The Jays were getting smoked in that game by the Yankees. Tunes stands up, turns around. He's like, you guys are losing bets? you guys actually want to win some bets? Like, I bet for a living. Let's exchange numbers. Like, no shame, nothing like that. And ended up working with those guys that he met in Toronto that never met in his entire life before. So honestly, it really is just like putting yourself out there. Like, you hear anything related to sports betting, why not take a shot, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. You need to be able to put yourself out there, I guess. But it is as you mentioned, technically booking bets, betting is 100% legal. Like, actually just physically placing a bet.
Yep.
But booking bets is illegal. So it's obviously hard to find someone who's just openly talking about doing something illegal or knows someone, or you know what I mean? It's not great.
Yes. So we want to talk a lot about syndicates, betting partnerships, stuff along that lines. First and foremost, just to give everyone some context behind why we're having you on to discuss this, can you talk through your first experience with a betting group and basically how you got involved with that? Because obviously there's collecting accounts is one thing, but now actually connecting yourself with people that win, an actual group that wins, that can help you win. How did that all come to be?
Yeah, so I'd always heard about it. I'm part of gambling Twitter. I don't tweet, but I read everything. I consume as much content as possible. I was part of the Right Angle Sports Slack, the Discords out there. And I'd always known that there was these people that gather accounts and they're constantly talking about how much they win. They love blasting off those screenshots of winning weeks. It's funny, they never blast off the losing weeks, but they blast off those winning weeks. And I knew they were out there. I have two partners that I work with, two friends, one I've known forever, one that I've actually only ever met over Zoom. It's really funny. I talk with him all the time. He's from Seattle, Washington, and I've never actually met him in person. But those are my two partners, and we were originating small market stuff for a group, which means we were coming up with the bets, we were telling them what to play, and then they were getting us more money down than we could ourselves. That's due to being limited at offshore accounts, like your Bet Online or your Heritage or whatever it may be, and getting kicked off of PPHs, or the small market that we had wasn't actually listed on a PPH account. So we were getting down through this group. We knew that they collected accounts. I had collected 4 or 5 myself, and I was kind of betting whatever I could into them. I eventually just decided to take the plunge, and I said, hey, here's 5 accounts. I have no clue how this works. I have no idea what this looks like, but here's 5 accounts. Please go win me some money. Okay. I know that I can win in my small market, but I know that I can't beat all these other player props. I know that I can't beat major markets. I can't time the market. I don't know what I'm doing. Essentially, take these accounts, go win me some money. And they did. They took the 4 or 5 accounts, and I saw them. They started winning money. And it was awesome. It was my first relationship with a betting group was very positive. They were great people. With time comes experience, and you kind of learn about what you want to see and what you don't. And some groups do win more than others. This group won, they won. But that's essentially how I got into it, was originating for them and then just giving them my accounts on top of that.
Right. So now you say you eventually you just took the plunge, started handing over accounts. What gave you the confidence level in this group particularly, or whoever you were dealing with, being a winner? Because one of the challenging things in the space right now is the amount of people who misrepresent themselves, right? Like the Twitter screenshots, exactly as you mentioned, right? People are going to post their winning weeks. They're not going to post their losing weeks. There's basically so many ways to mislead someone into believing that you're actually a winning bettor at this point. So was this just a calculated gamble on your end? Did you have people vouch for other people, so on and so forth? What gave you the confidence basically to work with them?
Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with they were getting down for us with origination, and they were always good for the money, which is huge in this space. Is when you want to get paid, they paid on time, no questions asked. But beyond that, this space is very reputational based. You ask around, you ask what groups win, what groups don't. Yeah, you might hear that they had a bad 2 weeks, but for the most part, lots of the groups win. If you're scared of taking the plunge and you're not sure about a group if they win or lose, ask around, like you said. Go into the Discords, go into the Slacks. I think my article on the Hammer, I actually linked a couple of these groups you can go into, free, completely free. Go in there and just post, hey, can I trust so-and-so? You'll get a few DMs. They'll be honest with you. Gambling Twitter or gambling space in general is honest, if nothing else. For the most part, when they're giving you advice about someone, ask around, get the vouchers. And then when it's so reputational based, these guys, if they do consistently lose week after week after week, I was willing to lose at the beginning. I was willing to say, okay, if they aren't actually as good as they say, I'll get it test out, I'll test drive it. And if it's not working out, I'll pull the accounts back, no problem. Okay. Might cost me in the short term, but in the long term, it's the right decision. So asking around, seeing their actual performance for a couple of weeks, it was very clear, very obvious early on they were going to be long-term winners. But I think more than anything, you just got to you have to take a chance at some point. You really do.
Yeah, agreed. How do you go about negotiating stuff like that? Or, when you're pretty raw in the space and you haven't been sharing accounts before, what was that first process like in handing over accounts? Did you take free roll deals? Were you a risk partner? Walk me through that. And if you also leveraged the gambling community, whether it was Discords or Slacks, to help you navigate your way through setting up that actual partnership.
So I like taking on risk. I want to go 50-50 off the jump. I would love to go 75-25 my way, but that's probably just not going to happen. Most groups, just kind of to kind of pause, groups are willing to go 50-50 with you if you're willing to share in the wins and the losses. There's also free roll scenarios where you can you only get the upside and you get none of the downside, but the account has to be lifetime positive. That's more like a free roll situation, but I was to go 50-50. I wanted to go all in. I wanted to make money. And this was the way I saw doing it. The way that I thought to grow this fastest was to trust them and let them put in the bets and then get my piece of it and then figure out, okay, is this group good enough or can I actually move on to the next? I didn't want to hurt the relationship or anything like that, but this is just like if you had a financial advisor in real life, this is your money, it's your performance. You have to figure out what is the best way to make it grow fast enough. And I thought, okay, I'm going to treat them like they're my financial advisor. And if they're making me money, awesome. I'm going to keep rolling with them. If not, I'm going to move on to the next.
Right. And now where did that leave you with your own personal betting? Because you said you were originating some small market stuff. You're now handing over accounts to other people who are winning in those accounts and you're collecting profits. Are you continuously doing both at this point? Do you just cut out your origination? Walk us through that essentially, because I know a lot of people who have gone down the path of originating like you were to start, and they were making some money, but then they started working with some bigger groups and they're like, oh, I'm making a killing here and I don't really have to do any work. Why am I wasting my time with this other stuff? So just curious what your experience is like and what your day-to-day betting looks like now, actually.
My personal betting, you want to keep making bets because you want to become a better bettor. But it's hard to do it in the account when they're tying up a lot of the credit. Okay. So when you're handing off an account, you're handing off an account with $2,000, $3,000, maybe, I don't know, $10,000 worth of credit on the high end. They're going to fill that account up with bets. They're going to bet all sorts of stuff that some of it, some of it, you're like, what is this third tier soccer league that I'm pretty sure doesn't actually exist. They're going to fill it up with all sorts of stuff. And you want to keep betting, but it's really hard to do that when you know that you have losing stuff for the most part, or maybe break even stuff. And this group is going to fill it with winners. Why in the world would I take up credit that my group can't use and fill it with losing bets? Why would I not just sit back, let the bets roll in, let the wins roll in, and let it go from there?
I will say, being on the other side of that sometimes, and maybe you could speak to this as well, I would love for someone that I take an account from to keep betting into the account and firing some losers in there, because those are technically the ones that last the longest as well. It's a nightmare for record keep, for accounting on Mondays.
And stiffs.
Yeah, and stiffs on top of that, for sure, which we'll get into as well. But I think in a lot of times, I used to be very opposed. I'd take an account from somebody, I'd be very opposed to them betting into it. I'd be like, no, this is done. Like, you're handing over the account now in full and we're taking it. Over time, I've kind of changed my stance on that. It does make like I said, the accounting on Mondays much more difficult to navigate through bets, but I find that it actually keeps the accounts open longer nowadays. So anyways, that's just a little bit of a tangent on that, but particularly wanted to get back to basically the discussion around, essentially, let's quickly move on here. We've covered a lot of stuff that's like maybe a little bit more fine-tuned, so to speak. Let's go to high level really quickly. Just pull it back for 1 second. So one of our most viewed episodes of Circles Off ever was when me and Johnny watched an interview that Ross Tucker did with Simon Hunter of the Action Network, where we dissected that interview, where Simon was talking about how he works for a syndicate, and we obviously strongly disagree with his definition of a syndicate based off of that. How would you personally define a syndicate or a professional betting group?
Yeah. And first of all, that episode was fantastic. For the record, everybody needs to hear this. We need more of that. I'm not saying to shit on people for no reason. I'm saying let's police each other. If someone's going to go on a podcast and mislead their listeners like that, that was so full of shit. That entire interview was awful. Call it what it is. Okay. I have no problem saying that. I would love to talk with Simon and let him know he sounded like a moron. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
With that said, syndicates, betting groups, professional groups, whatever you want to call them, how I look at them, they're usually a small collection of people. I'm guessing they want to keep it small because more mouths to feed, more money to divvy out on the wins, but somewhat small group of people. Sometimes you have an organization that actually splits the duties. Like, one guy talks with the partners, one guy does the betting, one monitors the accounts, one does the accounting, whatever it may be. But these syndicates, they are the account gatherers. They reach out to people like me and they're saying, hey, please give us accounts. These syndicates, these betting groups, again, whatever you want to call them. They're going to ask for your username. They're going to ask for your password. They want to know where you're from so they can use an IP address that is from that area.
Right.
They're going to ask how you want to split the account 50-50. Do you want a free roll? And then they're going to look at like, hey, how much is an okay amount possibly to win on this account? Not all groups ask that because some groups are just going to try and churn and burn, win. And if they burn the account out, they burn the account out. But a lot of groups are kind of moving towards, hey, how much is okay to win? How much is okay to keep pushing every week? That's what I think of a syndicate, a group that is betting into accounts. They're collecting accounts from the general public, from people like you and I. Sometimes they're doing the betting themselves. Sometimes they're actually reaching out to originators and saying, hey, can you make bets into these accounts? Yep. Guys, just think about it realistically. This small group of this syndicate, maybe it's 4 or 5 people. There's no way they know all the sports, all the lines, all the time. What's the best way to do it? Well, let's collect people that do know how to originate. They do know how to make their own lines. They do know how to figure out the market. Let's let them bet into the accounts themselves, and then we'll just take advantage. So I kind of wrote in the article, when I go 50-50 with in a syndicate, 50% of their winnings is actually usually going to somebody else on top of that. So they're not getting the full 50 that I give them. They're actually paying for their originators. They're paying for the people that are making them money through their own lines.
Yeah, that's well said. Very noticeable as well. As someone at one point in life who gave out accounts as well to other people, still do now for accounts that I don't bet into, you'll often see play overlap in the same account, in the accounts that you give out to completely separate people. I'll give out to somebody that's Europe based. I'll give out to somebody that's in California. And then I'll review the play history and you'll see how much is overlapping in between those because they're likely now going and turning around and finding the same originator to bet into those accounts as well. So just interesting how it's all interconnected like that overall. Managing the process of this, or like the full thing though, you're the guy that has to meet with the bookie and collect from the bookie and then pay out, whether that's in crypto or cash or whatever. But I assume that some of those interactions must be not fun ones to have. Let's put it that way.
Sure. And it's weird because most of the time, why you're handing off account in the first place is you are a losing bettor and you want to win money. Okay. The bookie, who's been your best friend as you paid them and they bought cars, I'm sure, and they paid for their kids' college. They loved you. And then all of a sudden you are starting to win consistently. Week after week, you're winning money. Some account gatherers I've heard of, they like to groom the account. And I agree with it to an extent. And what I mean by grooming the account, an account that they've been losing in many weeks, years, whatever. Maybe their bet amounts were only like $50, $100. When you pass off your account to a syndicate, they don't want to bet $50. They don't want to bet $100. They want to bet a lot more than that, closer to the max bet on the account, which might be 300, might be 500, something like that. So I'm of the opinion, yes, grooming the account is good to a point. Maybe you start putting in bets for larger amounts so that when you pass the account off to a syndicate, it doesn't look so weird. It doesn't look so suspicious. You were a $50 bettor last week. Now you're a $400 bettor. That doesn't add up. Okay. Sure. It might look degenerate for a while. It might look like you're just kind of chase all your previous losses, but after a while, they're going to catch on. Oh shoot, this guy figured out what he's doing and he's betting a lot more money. So grooming the account is something that you might do with a bookie before, and then maintaining that relationship as it goes. I'm kind of OCD, guys. I I take meticulous notes on what has worked and what has not. And I used to think that there was like this pathway you could take of like, this will keep the account open for longer. If I only place certain markets in certain amounts, to an extent, yes. But I've lost, I don't know, I don't mind being open or anything. I've lost 52 accounts in the last year. Okay. Gathered and lost 52 accounts, PPH accounts, in around, just this is purely numbers I'm looking at, $5,000. About winning $5,000, the bookie says, I don't care who you are. I don't care that we used to have a great relationship. You are done. I'm not letting you win any more money off of me. I don't care that at one point in your betting career, you were down 20 grand. You're now up on me lifetime and I'm done with it. Managing that relationship is tough because, again, you go from probably a losing bettor to a winning bettor somewhat quickly, almost overnight in some instances.
So what do those conversations look like? Like, do you get accusations beforehand of like, hey, what's going on here? There's times where I hand bet an account, for example. So just so people who know, hand bet is typically how the average person would bet. They're just going to go to the actual sports book. They're going to type in the wager amount and click it. You could bot an account, which is different, where it's just basically a bot is automatically going to play whatever you want to play. But I've had times before where I'd be hand betting an account and winning, and the bookie would come to me and they'd be like, oh, we got it. You know, the agent would say we got suspected bot alert or on this or whatever, trying to like feel me out in a sense to see whether or not I was doing something that was not right or, you know, sharper or so on and so forth. So what are those conversations like? Is it do you tend to just typically be cut off immediately? Like someone says, that's it, here's your money, we're done, or not even here's your money, we're done when you go to pick up?
You ever go log in and get the old message? You know,
call customer service. call customer service.
It's just call cust service.
Call cust service. Yeah.
Yeah. The relationship between you, the account gatherer, and the bookie is tough. I've seen it every which way. I've always been confused. I have friends that will, even before they pass their accounts off, they're like texting with the bookie each week as if they're friends. Like they're sweating games together. It's like, dude, you're not sweating the game with him. He wants you to lose and you want to win. There is no way that you guys are on the same side. It's just not going to happen. So some of my friends will pass off the accounts and they're like winning and they're trying to like maintain that relationship with a bookie. Like, hey, I guess I'm getting kind of lucky. You're not getting lucky. You sound stupid. You're actually bringing attention to your account. Okay. My goal has always been, I get an account from a bookie. I'm polite. I pay on time every single Monday morning or even Sunday night if they'll allow it. I try not to really talk with them very much because I don't think that can go any way but south. The bookie and you are on opposite sides. Right. They are not your friend. They're not hoping you win. They want to take your money. This game is not hard. I feel like we add all these parameters, and guys, the name of the game is I make a bet, it wins, it loses, or it pushes. And at the end of the week, I'm either up money or I'm down money. The bookie pays me or I pay the bookie. The relationship has to be what you feel comfortable with. Okay. If you think talking with them, if they're chatterbox and you think talking with them is going to lead to a longer account, sure. I know that you guys have people on in the past, guests that you've had that have this gift. They can talk with their bookies and they can win money off of them. And somehow they're still best friends. I've never had that issue. My bookies text me, F you, here's your money. I don't ever want to talk with you again.
Yeah. Lose my number. That's what I've gotten that one a few times before.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just like it's done. Leave it. So, fair enough. Obviously there's other strategies. I was going to ask, have you ever tried to, act square on purpose in front of the bookie, or, you know what I mean? To ask him dumb questions that you know the answer to?
Yep. I've tried texting like a college student. I've tried texting like I'm a very buttoned up professional. I've tried to take on different, I hate that. It's like you're an actor and I'm terrible at acting. But kind of going back to
what's the funniest text you've sent then?
I've sent one time like a paragraph, like a text this long, no periods, no just like no grammar whatsoever. Just like one long train of thought. Like, hey, I'm a big bettor. I like to bet high volume. I bet like every sport. I love when there's 4 sports going on. It's just the best, just going on and on like that. And it honestly, for the most part, you get your credit increased. And what I mean is like you have like a 3K credit, and that sometimes gets you up to like 5 or 6. But when you pass off these accounts, kind of going back to an original point, you don't know how it's going to work. Like, the relationship with your bookie, but your syndicate, your betting group that you're passing off the account to doesn't. So it becomes a really tough, like cat and mouse game of like, sometimes you have to like talk with your group about, hey, I know this person best. I know how to talk with them. Right now, they're upset with us winning a lot of money last week. Maybe we kind of scale back a little bit this week. Okay. The relationships, I don't think there's any perfect way to go about it. Again, we always want a one size fits all answer in the space, but your relationship with your bookie is 100% what your gut tells you each week.
Agreed. Just a disclaimer for everyone out there. This is by no means suggesting that you need to enter betting partnerships to be successful in betting or anything like that. There's lots of ways to be successful in betting. Also, just sharing a personal story, which you brought to mind with the credit limit increase. I think if you do ever end up working with a betting group in any capacity, you want to be part of that. That's the way you want to win. It's very, 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 very important to be specific with details and understand what you are getting into. So one example is I once handed over an account to someone where I did not know what the actual credit limit in the account was. And I was in my early 20s, did not have a lot of money. The credit limit on that account was $250K. And that weekend for college football and NFL, it was maxed. And I was sharing risk on that account. So imagine being a 22-year-old that you're basically now have 125K in play because I'm an idiot and I didn't really ask the right questions beforehand. So just be very, very careful about that stuff. And I just want that to be a disclaimer for anyone out there. Obviously, you got to know, do your due diligence, know what you're getting into.
Did you win?
I didn't lose enough for it to be a memorable. Like I don't even like remember, but it wasn't a big win or a big loss because it was like forgotten. But I clearly remember logging into that account and I was like, oh my God, like what am I going to, like, what is this? Like, I'm going to have to like packing my suitcase, basically. Like I'm going to have to be out of town if this loses, right? The old suitcase bets. Yeah. Like when Greece won the Euros sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but it was like 2004 or whatever, when Greece beat Portugal in the Euros. Every single Greek in Toronto on like the Danforth bet Greece to win the Euros at like an absurd price because Greece is horrible at soccer. It's like 100-1, 200-1. And they all won these bets. All the bookies in Toronto were gone. Like they called it like the suitcase bets, right? It was like they packed their suitcases as soon as Greece won that finals. They were flying somewhere else because
Greece.
They were flying to Greece. Wouldn't have been that hard to track them down. But yes, just want to make it very clear to people out there. There's a lot of things you can gather from this conversation. At the end of the day, do your due diligence on anything. I'm just curious. So you write an article about betting partnerships. The first thing that you put in that article is, hey, I did a Google search about betting partnerships. And like, you're not going to find anything about this. Why do you think that betting partnerships are not discussed at all in the space? Because with the emergence of sports betting now and it becoming more and more mainstream, you'd figure we'd start to see stuff on these topics, but we don't. This is just like, it doesn't exist. Your article is a unicorn article, as I call it, just doesn't exist. So why do you think that we don't see more content around this type of stuff in the betting space?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's why I wrote the article is you guys, you're my favorite you're the best sports betting podcast out there. I know you guys, it's weird to hear those compliments, but you are. And even you guys don't really touch on the PPH.
Take that, Spanky. And Spanky.
Yeah, you guys are the best. And even you guys, and you're both pros. I know you're both successful, unless you've just completely been living the biggest lies ever. But you're successful, and you don't really talk about the PPH world. You don't talk about this paperhead space. You don't talk about betting partnerships. And I've always wondered why. I don't hear you talk about it. I don't hear Rufus talk about it. Spanky obviously does, because that's how he's built his entire empire, essentially, is betting partnerships. And I think they're not talking about, I would guess a lot of people, your everyday person, thinks it's illegal to bet into a local. I would guess that's at the forefront of it, is people don't want to talk about it because they think they're doing something wrong. And obviously people aren't in a big hurry to talk about what they're doing wrong. It's not the case. Betting into a local is not illegal. Okay, we've already discussed the other side of that, but betting into them is not illegal. It's okay to talk about. All right. And the betting partnerships, it only works with paperheads. Again, I think I mentioned this in the article, but a lot of people are still relying on their legal outs, their DraftKings, their FanDuels, or even if they go offshore, they're relying on Bovada or Bet Online. these places you can't enter into a partnership agreement with. I want to make that also very clear. These places have geo-complied. Their technology is too good. The technology catches you. If someone else is logging into your account, sometimes they'll flag, if brothers in the same house were making bets, they'll flag them as logging into each other's accounts. Their technology is too good. You can't pass off an offshore account. You can't pass off a DraftKings account. I'm sure bettors are working on getting around that. I'm sure they're in the works right now. But for the most part, this can't happen with those. And with so many people reliant on those types of betting situations, they can't pass off the account. So unless, like we started this conversation with, unless you've lucked your way into a PPH with a bookie that's giving you a decent credit limit that the betting syndicate can actually use, you can't pass off the account.
Right. For full transparency purposes, obviously myself and Johnny are co-owners of BetStamp. We deal with mostly regulated books, and we don't talk about the PPH world a whole lot, because the reality is I would highly advise, and I'm saying this with like full transparency, it's not because of business or whatever, but I'd highly advise people to bet into regulated books as much as humanly possible. There's lots of options out there, and we're going to get into getting stiffed, but it's one way to make sure or ensure that you are getting paid. Period. Plain and simple.
Speaking of stiffs, if you're looking for a place that won't stiff you, this podcast is presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. It is the world's sharpest sportsbook. It's where the professionals play. Sign up today. Not available in the USA.
With your betting partnerships, curious on just a human level, do you maintain personal relationships with these people? Is just you just deal with them over Telegram or Signal or WhatsApp, or like do you actually have friendships now with the people that you've worked with in the betting space?
I wouldn't say friendships. We're friendly. The most hilarious part, I think about this like once a day, seriously, is I don't know what they look like. I'm in these betting. I talk with these people daily. I don't even know what they look like. I've never been to a bet bash. I've never flown out to meet them. They're located all over the country. I'm talking with people that are winning me significant sums of money. I'm originating for, and I have no clue what they look like. It's hilarious. It's a weird dynamic, and it's something I find really fascinating about the space, is that we can all, as long as we have a common goal, it doesn't matter. The rest of the details don't matter. We're all just trying to win money. We're all trying to get better at sports betting. Who cares where they're from? Who cares what they look like? Who cares what they do? As far as friendships go, I definitely have met people that like I kind of alluded to earlier. I have one of my partners is from Seattle, Washington. Shout out Robert. Robert is awesome. I've spoken with him on Zoom 3 times in my life, and we've won lots and lots of money together. It's awesome. It's a great way to go. What's that?
Billions and billions of dollars together.
No. But we've done really well together, and it's just because we bonded over sports betting. Sports betting is awesome. It should be fun. It should be unique. It should be interesting to you. It should motivate you. And with that said, I would love to get to know these people. I would love to go to a bet bash. It's just never worked out for me. I'd love to just fly out to where they're from and like hang out with them for a weekend, drink beers and watch sports. I mean, it would be a great hang. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird dynamic.
Last thing we'll touch on with betting partnerships, and then we'll move on here. In the article you wrote over at The Hammer, you discussed 3 personal experiences with specific betting groups. Curious, what made you move on from one to another? Like, what was it about a specific group where you're like, this is not for me? Or was that actually just all overlap where you were working with them at the same time?
Yeah, and to kind of give some context, there's no so when you get an account, you can pass it off to a group. And Rob, you alluded to this earlier. Sometimes you'll pass an account off to multiple groups. Maybe it has a big credit limit, and you want to get diverse action in there. You want to see some hockey, you want to see some basketball, you want to see some baseball, whatever. You can pass the account off to whoever you would like. Now, accounting becomes super difficult in those situations. You hope that the betting group has a really good accounting department. Some do, some don't. But you can pass the account off to whoever you would like. So there is overlap in some instances. For the most part, just my personal preference, when I pass off accounts, I've really liked keeping them all to one group. I want to communicate with one group. I don't want to figure out who placed what, because to take this one step further and to make it even more confusing, sometimes the groups you pass the account off to are actually passing it off to somebody else on their end. Okay, I've had that situation too, where it's like they don't technically know every bet that got put in the account. Sometimes they're a little unsure if it was them or not, because they pass it off to somebody too, because that's how they network themselves. That's how they get along with other betting groups. My personal experience, I worked with 3 different groups. The first one, super nice. They won money. It just wasn't, I'm detail oriented. I like communication. I like things done as I want them done. I know I want to be able to anticipate what's coming. I wasn't getting that from them. Again, I would work with them again, as I mentioned in the article, but it wasn't for me at that point. I was ready to move fast, and they weren't moving super fast for me. Second group I worked with, no overlap with the first. This group was aggressive. You will run into different styles when you're passing off accounts. When you're in betting partnerships, you will find groups that are easygoing. They won't bet the max amount on every single bet. They won't hit openers. This group was the exact opposite. They max bet the second a line posted on a PPH, they hit it for the max bet. $1,000, $2,000. They knew when the lines were coming out, and they would max it out. And I was like, guys, I get we churn and burn these accounts, but you've got to at least like do something. Like this is not good. Like, don't get me wrong, I love winning money. That's what we're doing this for, but this is just going to get me kicked immediately. Okay. Talk about relationships with bookies. That's when you get the text like, how are you getting these lines so fast? I don't know. I guess I'm getting better at this. I don't know. So eventually that wore thin on me. They won, they lost, they would win. And when you do that, you win big and you lose big. Those accounts would win big and they would lose big. And I was kind of hoping also for a little bit more steady. And finally, I made it to my third group. This was a group kind of similar to the first, where I was originating for them. And I also knew that they collected accounts, and I liked their style. Just like anything in life, you have to find what works for you. They don't really max bet. They vary their bet timing. They bet on a lot of different things. Sometimes it looks like degenerate action. Sometimes it looks like pro action. I think it's disguised pretty well for the most part. In their overall demeanor, the way they communicate with you is very much for me. They're on top of their stuff. They get things out to me when I need them. And I just want to respond sometimes. If I have a question, I'm not asking you to tell me your entire betting operation, but I have a question sometimes and I want to know. They'll respond to me. And I like that.
Nice. Sounds like you've, that's great. There's 3 different groups and 3 different styles. I've worked with all very similar across the board. So, all right. I want to talk about getting stiffed in the space. For those that don't, 99% of you listening know about getting stiffed. For those that don't, it's essentially when someone doesn't pay you out. Take off. Some cases they're upfront about it and they're like, I'm not paying you. Some cases you're going to get the old delivered message and never read type of situation. So Ferris, in your personal experience, what runs the highest risk of getting stiffed in the space?
Completely PPH world. You are not getting stiffed from a legal book. There's too many legalities. There's too many regulations. If you make a bet with a legal sports book, there's a 99.9% chance you are getting paid that money. Yes, your account might be closed down. Yes, your bet limits may be slashed afterwards. And yes, these companies sometimes have a hard time interpreting their own rules, which is hilarious, but you're getting paid. You're getting paid without a doubt. Where it gets the middle ground, I'll call it, is offshores, bookmaker, bet online, Bovada, whatever. If they think that they've been wronged, if you took advantage of a software glitch or if you took advantage of something, a bad line, if they would want to, they can decide we're not paying you this money. Now, that's not good for their reputations. And these offshores rely almost entirely on reputation. There's ratings that they get them. I feel as a person, I think these rating services have been somewhat compromised, it feels like, in recent years. But with that said, they do rely on reputation. If you do make some posts about them, it can look bad for them. So most of the time, the offshores are going to pay you out. Most of the time. You are going to get stiffed when it comes to a PPH. A local bookie is going to have it. Either they took on more action they could handle, or they have the money and they're just sick of giving you the money. They're going to stiff you at some point. It's a matter of when, not if.
Right. Specific bet types that you notice that are more likely to get stiffed, specific sports, timing of bets, basically the action in the account. Has there been some sort of correlation between the action and your ability to collect money?
Yeah. And let's get into this. Bookies are dumb. They're dumb people. Okay. I'm not trying to sugarcoat
we're generalizing. There's probably some out there, but yes.
Okay. I get it. I'm speaking to the masses here. Yeah. Bookies are dumb people. Their IQ level is low. They know 2 things. I take in bets and I take in money. That's all they know. Okay. The ones that are on the more intelligent side of the spectrum, they know that if you bet early in the week, doesn't matter what market it is, if you bet early in the week and you're beating the closing line, I'll say this, if they identify that you're beating the closing line, you're probably kicked real fast. Okay. Now they're usually the smarter ones are also more willing to not stiff you. They're probably going to pay you your money. but they're going to catch on to your CLV and they're going to catch on to your timing of bets a lot sooner. Okay. The dumb ones, which is the majority of them, they don't notice anything. All they look at is at the end of the week, here's how much money I won and here's how much money I lost. I got to pay out. That's all they're looking for. Something that will even catch the bookies that don't really know what they're doing, the things that will catch their eye, FCS football. It's I think Spanky tweeted about this a couple weekends ago. Who bets FCS football? Degenerates that aren't going to pay the bookie, or pros that are going to take all the bookies' money? I don't think there's any in between. First half action, second half action, not as bad looking, I guess, but I think I've been flagged a few times for halftime actions. What looks really degenerate and I like is quarter bets. That never looks sharp for some reason, because it's like some guys rolling the dice on a quarter. But those can be some of the sharpest action you're going to see. Anything small market, a dumb or a smart bookie is going to catch on to.
I think it depends on the quantity of the bets as well. Like if I was a bookie and I logged, I'm checking an account and I see that they have a first quarter bet in like 20 college football games on that day, I'm probably more likely or more inclined to believe that that's sharper action than if somebody just puts in one or two and mixes it in with a bunch of full game bets. Personally, I don't know. I don't have the answers to this. I'm just speaking from if I was monitoring an account.
So, by the way, the game has changed a lot. The PPH world was typically like, hey, a lot of straight bets and parlays. If you go look into some kid's FanDuel account right now and just look through all his bets, they're going to be all player props, first touchdown, same game parlay, 16 parlay. They're not going to be money straights.
Yep. And
like, it actually is a little concerning because like most people now are actually not playing straights. Like the biggest square bettors, like the big guys who've been betting for a while are still used to that. But for the most part, there's not many anymore.
Well, do you remember about a year ago when Barstool released like their hold figures for like one of the quarters, and it was absurdly high, where everybody was coming out and being like, no, these figures are wrong, they're exaggerating 20%. Or whatever. And it's like, no, they're probably right, because the vast majority of this player base is just parlaying everything and consistently losing. So I agree with that. I think it's very much changing. I just wonder if on the PPH front, it is all that much. You know what I'm saying?
Well, pretty much like if you're a rec better right now, what are you actually betting on? You're probably betting NFL because you're a fan of the sport. And probably like if you're in Toronto, for example, then you might toss some bets on like Leaf games, Raps game, Jays game, stuff like that.
Right.
But if you end up, and maybe you're a big college football fan and every Saturday you put in college, but if you're just starting to bet on every single thing, like it is a little concerning.
Of course.
You know what's crazy about that Barstool thing too is I'm a Barstool fan. I would love to get a beer with Big Cat. It seems like a regular dude, but
I've had a beer with Big Cat before. He's a great dude.
That's
great
exactly.
Dude. Yeah.
He's America's best friend. Portnoy tweeted out that hold. It was like 27% or something absurd like that. And he wanted to say how well Penn was doing because he pumps Penn stock. He didn't realize what he was putting out was like, this is terrible. This is terrible for your customers. This is terrible for the longevity of Barstool Sportsbook. Have you ever noticed he's never done that ever again?
I have. I hadn't thought of that, but now I have. I have not seen Barstool figures being promoted by Portnoy or Big Cat in a long time, now that I think about it.
And to be correct, like Big Cat came out and said, hey, this isn't going to be like this forever. I bet it's going to come down. I think he was replying to individual tweets saying, hey, we had a good month or whatever. He knew it looked terrible for their bettors. Portnoy, no clue.
Right.
He did call Joey Knish a card counter as well.
Oh, one of the greatest moments in Knish's life. His entire life. If you have
his Twitter bio.
A Mount Rushmore of Knish's like favorite life events, that has to be on the Mount Rushmore.
It was funny because they just said, so what about that guy from Michigan? And he called you out on Twitter.
It is such a great clip. It is actually hilarious though. We're going on a tangent here, but it is hilarious that Joey Knish got Portnoy to respond to him. Like he triggered Portnoy enough that they actually had to talk about it. Like they even though it was a minute-long clip.
No, but like they put it up on the TV as like that. It was a topic on the guy's agenda. Like he put it on there as a topic.
When you think about Knish's like life achievements, obviously he got the Portnoy thing. He got
Charles Barkley
on NBA on TNT to say, what did he get him to say?
So also in his Twitter bio.
So what happened with that one was there was a prop for will somebody say Drake at the halftime. during like the halftime show, and then they were basically. They're like, the bettors wanted, Charles, like the bettors wanted, and they put up a thing, and it was Joey Knish. He said, somebody say Drake. And they put it up on there. And then Charles Barkley said, he's like, Drake. And then they're like, wow, the bettors just won. And then he was like, I'm one of the bettors.
So good. Oh, man. So
that
good.
one is his Twitter header. The picture of the
picture
TV.
of the tweet. Yeah.
That was when I actually first started following Knish over there. Was around that time. That was very, very funny. That was when he was grinding out that rent money.
Yes, big time. That's when Spanky used to, go at him twice a week for having a day job, maybe even more. Which, by the way, I have no issues with whatsoever. Preventative measures for stiffing, especially for large amounts. Is there any advice you can give to people who, to reduce the risk that they are going to be stiffed by a bookie?
Yeah. So let's start about for the side of you and your betting group, like you talked about earlier. Figure it out in advance. I think most betting groups are willing to work with you on a stiff, but if it does happen, don't wait until the time comes to figure out, okay, who's on the hook for what. If it's truly 50-50 and you got stiffed 1 week, okay, you're going to reach out to your betting group and say, hey, this group stiffed me. What are we going to do about it? If you have a good working relationship with them, okay, this is where it gets a little bit more nuanced. There's been times where I've gotten stiffed and I just didn't say anything because honestly, I want to stay in the good graces of my betting partnership. Yep. I want them to like me. I want them to continue giving me good bets. I want them to continue working with me on payments. If it's not a substantial amount of money, I'm probably not going to say very much. Okay. So, but before I go in, I know that's a risk I'm running on my end. Trying to not get stiffed from a bookie. I think if you keep the relationship professional, if you treat each other with respect and you're not like, when you have a big week, you're not texting like, hey, can't wait to meet up, pay me all my money. Keeping it professional goes a long way. I'm trying to think if there's been any pattern of what has or hasn't worked. I think it just gets to a point where the bookie, it might be as simple as like they're having a bad week, they lost a lot of money and they're in a bad mood and they want to stiff you. I think some of them keep, long-term wins and long-term losses, but a lot of them, I think they just got to a point where they had a bad week and they don't want to pay you the money. When that happens, it's super frustrating, incredibly frustrating. I've tried every which way to stop it from happening, but guys, at the end of the day, it's money, and money makes people make terrible decisions. And this is what ends up happening.
Do you ever get the vibe that it's coming? Like you're up a lot on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in an account, and you'll reach out to your betting partners and say, hey, let's stop betting this account because there's a chance that this might be coming?
Yeah, I never get the feeling, but I think we put a lot of safeguards in place so that we actually can't run up tabs. We have safeguards on our end that says, hey, if we're having a good week, it's probably going to stop. Bets are going to stop rolling in. And I would recommend those for anybody out there is make sure that you've made it very clear what you feel comfortable with taking from a book. Okay. If you're dealing with what you believe to be a younger, don't deal with college bookies, by the way, but if it's a younger bookie, probably don't run up a big tab, even if they have a real job and everything, you think they're good for the money and they've paid out big before. Previous payments do not equal future payments. That is for damn sure.
Agreed. Walk us through sometimes when you have been stiffed in the past and then how you approach those situations. Like what actions can you possibly take to collect your money? Or do you just consider it a lost cause at that point?
Yeah, it's not a lost cause. My worst quality as a human is I'm vindictive. I love a good grudge. I feel like you guys could probably appreciate that, but I love it.
But I agree with you 100% here because I know, and you're probably like this, Ferris, if I lose money, I'm always going to pay it. I am never going to just run and stiff some guy for an amount owed. So you just expect the same in return. And when that does not happen, I get spiteful when that doesn't happen. So I'm in the same boat. But I mean, that's just
the issue is no matter what the amount, it feels like absolute garbage to get stiffed any amount of money. Even if it's like $200, it feels so much worse to have like basically most people would be like, nah, you wouldn't actually. And maybe I wouldn't, but I would rather lose a $500 bet than get stiffed $300. Like I would feel, mentally it would be not a big, I'd be like, whatever. I don't have to think about this. Yeah, I lost a bet, right? Even though it's $200 more. Getting stiffed is the worst. It just feels like shit.
I just hate the notion of someone not paying you. And like when you could eat, like if you don't have the money, then just, I can't pay you this $2,000 this week. I'll pay you $200 a week for the next 10 weeks. Something like anything other than disappearing or just like not responding to like that is just treating another human being like they're garbage, essentially.
What do you respect more, Ferris? Do you respect the two situations? Number one, no response, complete ghost, or number two, like F you, I'm not paying you?
Oh, I respect the F you, I'm not paying you. Without a doubt. The ghosting, no response. What are you, 7 years old? Like, what are you doing? We're adults. We've been trading money for months. Okay. Do me the favor and tell me I'm pissed that you won. I think that you're sharp. You told me you weren't sharp, which is also hilarious because what do they want betting into them? But tell me you don't want to pay me the money, and at least maybe we can talk through it. So getting back to you talked about like what have you done? I've heard lots of methods. I've seen great stuff. I've seen stuff that I would never do. Before we get into this, I want to say like you have to do what you're comfortable with. Okay, the article that's coming out for the Hammer, one of the first things I mentioned is take stock of your personal situation. Okay, most of us have jobs. Most of us are professionals doing something where we want to be a respected peer of coworkers, and we're in front of customers and whatever. If this causes, and if anything you do is going to cause blowback in the office or just your personal life in general, probably don't do it. Okay. So don't do anything that you're not comfortable with. But things that I have heard that have been effective, a lot of these bookies, believe it or not, this is not their sole source of income. Yeah. They have a regular job where they're a regular person, which is really weird because when they're stiffing you, they're acting like an asshole. I assume they're not like that all the time, but they're stiffing you. They have a job. Call them up at work. Call up their secretary at work. Okay. Hey, how's it going, Johnny? Sorry, Johnny. I don't mean to pick on you.
No, you're good.
Yeah. How's it going, Johnny? Be very pleasant. Hey, I was just calling because it looks like you blocked my number and you owe me for last week. And I was just hoping maybe we could get that settled up. You know, they respond very quickly to that because for some reason they don't want to talk about their illegal side booking business while they're at their professional workplace.
Yes.
Another way, I've heard very creative. I've never done this, and I've heard of this, but maybe creating a website where you highlight the greatness of this individual, maybe their financial acumen, where they've taken in payments from other bettors. Maybe you highlight some of their accomplishments in the workplace. Maybe, I don't know if I agree with the personal information stuff, but maybe throw out their name. You never know. And then third, probably the I don't know, least effective, but like network. Throw out a message and again, one of those Slacks or those Discords and say, hey, I got stiffed by so-and-so. Your account had a prefix. All these PPH accounts we know have a prefix of like a letter and numbers.
Yep.
My prefix was JK and that was my prefix. Can anybody help me out? Bettors hate being stiffed and a lot of bettors hate other bettors. But what we really hate are the people that are stiffing others. So many people that actually don't really like working together, they will work together to help a stiff get resolved.
How do you feel about those with big followings that just put other people on blast with all the personal information on Twitter and things
like that? Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It's Johnny said, it's so unfair. It hurts. It really does. Like, call it what it is. It hurts, guys, especially when you're down lifetime. That's the worst, is when you're down lifetime in an account and then they're choosing to stiff you. Hopefully when you get stiffed, you're up on the bookie lifetime, at least to make it feel a little bit better, but it doesn't. It still hurts. We want a fair game. We didn't know the outcome of a game before it happened. Okay. Sharp bettors are doing their best. Yes, they have good information. Yes, they're winners over time, but they did not have the outcome. There was nothing unfair about what was happening.
Right.
Okay. So the bookie choosing to withhold the money, they've decided that you made a fair bet, but they're going to take an unfair action. And that's really what it comes down to. I love when they get put on blast. I love when Kanish went after that. I don't know, the hockey player stuff. I didn't really see. I was really upset there was no resolve to that situation, but I really wanted to know the ending. But yeah.
I believe the OHL did an investigation and concluded that there was nothing that was like going on there.
Yeah,
which seems to me like it was a bad investigation.
Definitely was.
I don't want to.
That seemed, yeah.
I'm privy to a lot of the details, but for legal purposes, I'd rather just not share those details.
Sure thing.
It is what it is. There was that math teacher as well that the guy put up the website. I'm not sure who that was.
The math teacher.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ferris?
I do. He was from Texas, I think.
I believe it. He basically was even given like accounts to students and stuff, and then they got him on that. So that was listen. you be a shit person, it's going to come back. And at the end of the day, like if you owe someone money, you really like, listen, I get it though. Some people are not in the situation to be able to pay right away. And cash flows is a real thing, especially if you take a bookie for a big week and it ended up being that just so happened that week, like 5 of his players took him for a big week. Like there has to be some sort of like understanding amongst the players of like, hey, all right, it was a big week. I can't actually pay. I don't have all the money to pay out this week. Otherwise I'm going to be in a tough spot. So we got to work something out here. Like, I'm sorry, but like, can we do, listen, I can't get it all to you now. I'll try to get you some later this week. I'll get you some. It's going to get paid. That, although it also is unprofessional, is going to happen in the industry because let's face it, again, you mentioned like a lot of these bookies, like, are they the best like cash flow managers of like their personal finances? Probably not. So it's definitely possible that some of them get stuck. We also have to realize like there's a lot of excuses that comes into it. So like they might have a guy that's taking a portion of the action, then he doesn't want to pay. And now it's like, well, if I want to pay this guy, now I got to pay out of pocket on this other share. So like I can only give that. We have to be understanding on some stuff as well.
Agreed.
But for the most part, anyone that just goes like, or even just says, no, I'm not paying you. You cheated me or whatever. It's kind of bullshit.
I agree.
But we should probably differentiate between there's slow pays and there's stiffs. A slow pay is someone who owes you maybe $2,000, like you said, and they're going to give you $200 for 10 weeks. That's a slow pay. They want to pay you. They don't have the money right now. A stiff is straight up, I'm just not paying you the money.
Right.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the slow pay is still unprofessional and oftentimes does lead to a stiff.
Yes.
A slow pay almost always becomes a stiff if you win long enough. So you want to just avoid that, get the portion of the money you can and then cut it off. But yeah, the absolute, it's brutal. This is why, again, like I personally would not ever recommend taking a PPH account and dealing with this. I would much prefer if you're in a legal betting state. There's just so many books that you could play at nowadays where, yes, you may get limited, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like you are relatively sure that you're going to be getting your money from a FanDuel, right? And you're not going to end up getting, you're not going to end up hitting a parlay for something and then losing. Right. Another thing, Ferris mentioned, like not running up the accounts too much. Like people don't really realize, but if you're $100 bettor and you're betting into like a college bookie and he's got a sheet where he's got only $100 bettors and you hit like a 6-team or a 20-team parlay for $10 that pays out like 10 grand, like you can't be betting that there because the chances are you're not going to get that money. So anything that has a payout, call it of above, I would even go maybe a little bit higher, but anything ever that has a payout, like a single event payout of more than like 25 grand, you would have to play that in a reputable spot.
Agreed. I think that's just common sense, like to avoid the possibility of stiff. What are some of the best excuses you've ever heard, Ferris, for not being paid?
Oh, God. They're always going to go to their other players' loss and they haven't paid them. Okay.
Yeah, that's the most common one. I think like common. That's just like, I'm waiting on somebody else to give me this money. It's not fair that I have to be out of pocket to pay you when I'm getting stiff. Like
your performance, get it straight. Your performance has nothing to do with their other players. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Sifs, inflation like 3 months ago was awesome. As if inflation just overnight was just like, nope, the money you want is gone because of inflation. It's like, I'm not sure you know what inflation is, dude. Like, I'm not sure you could describe what inflation actually means. I've had some people, it feels like they get like incredibly creative. It's like they create a short story in their mind. It's like the bookie rolled up to my boy's house. He rolled up with his guys. I think they had guns on him. They banged on the door. They took all the money. And yeah, man, we're just out of luck. And it's like, you took so long. Like if you would have just worked on finding ways to get me the money instead of creating that whole story, it would be a lot easier. There's always a family issue. I've never encountered a bookie who didn't have a family issue pop up on a week that I won. I've never seen a family issue pop up on a week that I lost.
Yeah. The timing of those are very convenient. Johnny, you've had any crazy excuses? I've had two. Like
what
nuts.
were they?
One was a guy that I was only dealing with online. So this is kind of my own fault at first anyways, just collected a book from somebody, had paid out before though. And I was kind of testing the waters with him for a long time, and then had a week where he's just like a couple days go by, not really responding to messages. Then he just sends me a message of like a house that is just like destroyed. And I'm like, hey bud, like what's going on here? Whatever. He's like, tornado came through the neighborhood. Like we're in shambles right now. Like whatever. I'm like, oh, sorry to hear that or whatever. And I know where this guy's located. So I'm like looking up if there's been tornadoes in the area, and like there have. But then I also Google photoed like house hit by tornado, something like that. It was literally one of the first pictures. Like he just took a Google photo from the internet and sent it to me and claimed that his house got hit by a tornado.
What if that was his house?
Imagine though, no, it was like an old picture, like really old. I checked the date on it.
Yeah.
So that was one. And then someone also sent me just a picture of like what looks like them attached to an IV in a hospital bed with a bracelet on, but they didn't even have the common sense. I could see the name on the bracelet and the date, and it didn't match the person that. So like they didn't even do but like pretending that they were in the hospital. But that was someone that went off the grid for like 3 or 4 weeks. You know, one of those where you're just messaging them regularly, not getting a response. Then they just resurface, and it's like, oh, sorry, man, I was in the hospital, like, you know, going through some health stuff right now. Sent me a picture of them attached to IV with a bracelet that's not even the right dates or name on it.
See, Rob, I got the opposite of that. This space makes you so jaded, you just assume the worst. I actually had a bookie who did end up in the hospital, and I was texting him, and he wouldn't text me back. And then we had a mutual acquaintance. He's like, no, he had like a seizure. It's like, oh boy, like, sorry for those texts I sent.
Yeah. Then I would feel like a real piece of shit if I did that. But listen, we're
jaded.
Exactly. We're just conditioned at this point to think that if we're owed money and someone is non-responsive, that they just don't want to pay us. And I think it's like, that's a fair assumption in this space. It's not.
Yeah, I had some, I honestly just can't really share mine on the air, but I have some good ones, some really good ones.
Maybe one day we'll get you to share them on the air.
Yeah. The annoying ones are the ones where like you didn't even win money in the account all in. And then they like, you pay them 1 week, then the next week you win it back and they stiff you. Like those ones you just want to like cry.
So like we'll get into this is like story time essentially now, but I used to meet up with a guy that used to pay me in a shoebox every time. So he'd give me all the cash in a shoebox, and like we would essentially, like when I'd pay him, I'd just put it in a shoebox as well. Like I got all these shoe boxes. Like what am I going to do with these shoe boxes? So we go back and forth. And then one day I just went and he handed me the shoe box and like I felt
a finger.
No, I felt
in there.
I felt when he handed it to me, like this is not right or whatever. And he's like, oh, see you later or whatever. And I go to the car and like I put it in and I open up, the shoebox is empty. And the guy owed me like, it was a significant amount. It was a 5-figure amount. So I text the guy. I'm like, what's going on, man? Box is empty. He's like, yeah, they're all going to be empty going forwards. We're done. This and that. Like he didn't even have the decency.
Wow. I respect that.
I met the guy in person and he didn't even have the decency to just say to me like, hey, you know, we're done here. Like you're not getting your money, you know, but like he handed me an empty shoebox in a bag, in like a grocery bag. And I'm holding it and I'm talking to the guy for like a few minutes afterwards. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this is weird. I'm like, this is not like, and I go to the car, open it up. So that was,
that's such a power move
in front of him.
Such a power move.
That is actually
hilarious. He knew I never opened it in front of him. This is years. This is like a year-long, like 2-3 year long relationship with this one person who I never knew beforehand, just got introduced to him, where we would have collections back and forth via shoebox. We chat, you know, meet at like a coffee shop outside in the parking lot or whatever. And then just one day, empty shoebox, guy's like, we're done. When I message him afterwards, I'm like, okay. But that goes back to your point about how they don't really care about, like, it's not a real relationship, right?
You never feel more alive than meeting in the parking lot of a Cane's Chicken Fingers and exchanging money with somebody else in person.
Oh, man. All right. We've covered a lot on this topic. I think it's been a good one. This is a very unique episode. Ferris, with every single one of our guests, we do ask them the same closing question. If you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, what piece of advice would you give to your former self?
Stop betting. Stop betting and start collecting people around you that are smarter than you, that are better than you at this, and can teach you. Not just better than you and want to fill your account with winners, but they can teach you what they're doing and make it make sense. I can't look at a spreadsheet and build from nothing. I can't. I don't have that capability. I don't have the time. I don't even really want to do that. But I'm really great at finding smart people and networking with them and looking at their work and talking them through. I'm a really great question asker. I can ask them, why are you thinking this? Why are you doing this? That's my skill set. So stop betting myself and start finding the people that I want to put around myself to make me a better. It would have cost me a lot less money. I would have started winning a lot sooner, and I probably would have learned a lot more.
I think that's really interesting advice. Surround yourself with smart people, essentially, or people who are experts in the field or know a lot more than you in the field. I think a lot of people could learn from that.
Probably take that
real quick,
advice
Rob,
in
I have
any
a-
industry. Go ahead, Ferris.
I have a tweet that triggers me real quick.
Sure. Fire it up.
February 7th, 2021. I will never forgive the guy who posted the rehearsal video. Never. The one day of the year where we can collectively all be on the same side and have a massive advantage over the books. And this guy tweets the fucking video. I still can't get over this.
I tweeted that.
You did tweet that.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember exactly the state of mind I was in when I sent that, because I considered not sending it for a long time. So this was the guy that tweeted the video of him holding a stopwatch outside
time in the anthem. But
time
why
in the
does it
Super Bowl.
trigger Ferris?
Why I want to have some sort of space to write. The Hammer has been awesome, and why I would love to go on this podcast and why this has been so great. I'm a regular person. I think I started off the top with that. I'm just a regular person. So much of gambling Twitter in the sports betting space, it feels like a boys' club to a lot of us. We feel like we can see the winners through a window, but we can't be the winner ourselves. And it takes a lot for us to get there. And when I see tweets like this, I think, well, Rob, I love you, Rob, but it's just like, you got that information. We didn't. The everyday person doesn't have the information. If I had an account with you, I would have that information. But there's so many people in these Slacks and these Discords who acted like that was a huge deal. But it's like, hey, the little guy, we weren't getting that information. I completely respect that, how much money you were making off of that. And you want everybody to be upset about it, maybe. But we, the little guy, we're not getting that. And it feels like there's this club we're trying to get into, but we can't get into it.
Fair enough. And I honestly never thought about it like that, because the people I surround myself with, for the most part, are, I guess, not the collection of people that follow me on Twitter. So it's a very different demographic. But everyone that I surround myself with would have shared that same experience with me, because candidly, I would get the anthem time every year. I don't think this is like there's any reason to avoid talking about this at this point. It seems pretty public. And I would relay it to as many people as I knew that could bet it on my behalf and give me some of what they were able to bet. And this was the year where it was ruined. It was a cash cow, quite literally as free money as will ever come in the betting space when you know the outcome of something and are able to bet it beforehand. So from my point of view, that was one of the most infuriating moments of my life, because it's something that I continuously capitalized on every year and knew that I would no longer be able to capitalize on that. And then this year, there was the opportunity for me to potentially get that again. And then Warren Sharp sent out a release on the...
He released it as one of his tout
He released
plays.
it as a tout play and moved the
He's
entire
easy.
line.
That could be reverse engineered. Easy.
Sorry, I don't know if I could say that on air, whether he gave the over or the under on the anthem, because somebody might be able to reverse engineer the anthem model. It could be a problem, but I appreciate that. Honestly, it's not a perspective I ever thought about. I'm sure if other people did a tweets that trigger me segment on their own shows, my tweets would appear in there a lot.
Oh, and I just want to give you a hard time, because again, why I'm creating content in the first place is I want sports betting to, let's open the doors up a little bit. These betting groups I mentioned in my article, they know it all, you know nothing. I want the little guy, I want the everyday person to not be so intimidated. I want them to feel like they have a place. I want them to feel like they can contribute something to the conversation. That's really all I'm trying to get to.
No, I get it. Obviously, it's very tough doing content in the space, right? Especially for someone who makes most of their income off of sports betting, where you are constantly towing the line, right? I do not want to produce shitty content. If I'm producing shitty content and I'm getting feedback that it's shitty and people aren't viewing it, then I'm not going to do it anymore, because it's just a waste of my time. I also don't want to continuously produce content that is just going to erode my edge over time as well. Like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and now, because I've said way too much, I no longer have the same edges that I have. So you have to find that happy medium, right? And like in regards to that anthem stuff, I would love to share the Super Bowl anthem time with everybody.
But then it wouldn't.
But
no one would make money.
No one's going to make money if I do that, right? So completely understand your viewpoint on that tweet. Well taken. I never actually thought about it from that perspective. It is a little bit eye-opening. But yeah, content space is tricky. It really is. Luckily, we've never cut anything out of this podcast, with a few exceptions because of a guest telling us to cut things out or whatever. But it's challenging to toe that line. That's just the reality of the situation. A lot of people don't face this problem doing content because they don't have an edge to begin with, and they are giving out stuff that is not worthwhile. It's not going to affect their ability to get down on games or anything ever. That's just something that we deal with.
So Ferris, you're putting your face out here now, and I know it's obviously a big step, and hope to welcome you into that community feel. One thing I was going to ask is there anything you want to plug? Social media? Are you trying to build a following? Do you want to share a Twitter handle?
Nothing like that. I guess the Hammer content or community content creators is what it's under. I'm going to keep writing for the Hammer. I've enjoyed it so far. I've only done 2 articles, but I'm going to keep writing because I want to feel connected. I want to write from my perspective, and I want people to continue opening up.
Perfect. You can go over to the hammer.bet. 2 articles that Ferris has written. Highly, highly recommended. What's a betting partnership? And So You Got Stiffed. Those are both great. For those who are on YouTube, in the comments below, tell us a story about when you got stiffed. The lamest excuse that you've ever had from a bookie, because we actually had some good comments on last week's episode or 2 weeks ago's episode. And I'm very curious if other people have stories out there. Thank you to Ferris. Thank you to Johnny. Thank you to producer Zach. This has been episode 74 of the Circles Off podcast. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the Circles Off channel.